My name is Wallace. I am a flippin' vampire. Just got home, went to the gym, got a really good workout in. Um, I'm tired, I'm hungry, sleepy. This is the perfect time to record a video, and here's why. Because I'm authentic. And since this video series is about vampires, I think it's good to be authentic and real. Um, so I just want to talk about a few things, so just like a therapy video and kind of got crazy eyes a little bit, but like I said, just got home, worked out a lot, but I still got a lot of energy inside of me, a lot of vampire energy, and I'm just chilling. I do work later. I kind of just want to stay home and like watch a movie, but it's not easy. Like being a vampire, clearly, I do truly believe that if you're gonna be like, you should always be a good person, right? Like you should always like my rules, like always be respectful, kind to others, always obey the law and try your best. That's basically what I'm doing. It's difficult. The difficult part about specifically is being understanding when people don't like you. And I totally understand, it's just, I get it. To me, it's not a big deal being a vampire. I know that sounds silly. Clearly, being supernatural of any sorts has, there are people who say, well, you're not supernatural. And there's some people who are like, dude, you're super supernatural. But I'm just a dude, just a guy grown up, just trying to work a job, uh, being trying to be ethical. Well, how can you be ethical when you can go out and you're drinking coffee and you're dressed like a wannabe rock star? You're not even a rock star. What are you doing? Well, and they're like, well, you think you're a celebrity? Nobody likes you. I'm saying, well, that's kind, not very nice of you to say, but that's obviously not true. My grandma likes me. That's all right. Freedom of speech. And they're like, well, what you gonna do, Mr. Vampire, growing celebrity? What you got planned? I'm like, well, I'm gonna go to work. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna go to the coffee shop. I'm gonna drink coffee. Gonna work out. Gonna do my job and pray to God. Say, well, why are you praying to God? You worried about something? I'm like, well, I am worried about my eternal soul. I'll admit that. I don't particularly want to go to hell. It is Sunday, talking about spiritual things. I do love Christianity. Is it scary for me, the concept of going to hell? In a strange way, yes. But kind of hurts to say that, And I think it's supposed to hurt. It's like there are a lot of people who are like, "You are damned," and I'm like, "Well, I hear what you're saying, but I'm still gonna live a good life." So what are you doing? I'm like, well, drinking coffee, reading books, working on my computer. Well, what are you doing on your computer? I want to know. I'm like, well, pretty transparent. I've got two main projects. One of which is I don't. I'm the type of person who like starts a project and like gets to the completion of it, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna wait for till I feel ready. So the two projects specifically, one has to do with trying to uh, like it's essentially like trading stocks, but it's not. Like I've done that. Like when I was younger, I talked about how well, like when I first got turned into a vampire, I'm like, well, I'm kind of screwed. No, ain't nobody liking me. I'm by myself. I gotta figure out. I'm probably not when I'm older. I'm probably gonna be alone and probably not have employment. You know, sad to say. So I was like, well, I gotta figure out a way. I've always liked uh, financial stuff. You know, trading stuff. I always found it fascinating. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna create a program to help me try to do some trading. Well, I failed at that. Failed at it several times. I was like, well, gotta figure out something else. Legal, of course, and ethical, of course. So I'm like, well, I'm pretty smart. Figure this out. So that's my first project. Second project is artificial intelligence. Well, they already got that. They got what? They got all kinds of that. Why would you want that in the first place? Well, back to what I said. Um, I believe that when I'm older, well, I had the belief that when I was younger, that when I got old, I'm gonna be by myself. Got to figure out a way to be able to live and survive by myself. And I'm like, well, I'm gosh darn good at doing computer programming. You know, if I am ethical and I obey the law and I'm you know cool, I don't really see a problem with that. So I've it's not easy. Um, my second project was I knew was going to be my something that really challenged my brain. Thinking and using being an artist. There's a lot of creativity in it. You get to imagine what something um, from a creative perspective, what it can be. You know, and like when I was younger and more naive, I was like, well, you run into people, business type people, and they're like, hey, young guy who's I used to work in the IT field to begin with. I was this ambitious, naive, more naive than I am now, younger guy. And I was like, they're like, so what can you do? I'm like, well, I got these, I can work on computers. I'm good at taking them apart, putting them together. They're like, wow. I was like, yeah, trustworthy. I mean, they're like, well, everybody says they're trustworthy. I'm like, well, uh, and they're like, what else can you do? I'm like, well, I'm really, I'm doing this computer programming stuff. And I mentioned, and I could see the wheels turn, and I'm like, all right. At some point, I was like, I got to do this on my own. Like, people are people, right? I'm just like, I'm just doing this, doing it for myself, doing things by myself, and I'm so used to doing that, being self-reliant. And the cool thing about computer programming and stuff like that is that it don't cost any money. And I've always been kind of struggling, but so yeah, Keith. keeps my brain healthy. It's just like reading books. You do things to keep your mind healthy, body healthy. Uh, Fortunately, I get to be around people and work with people, so I get to have that part of my brain be healthy. I'm really freaking healthy. Like, uh, like I said, I just got home, worked out at the gym for like 2 hours. You know, so I've kind of got like that crazy look in my eye, but I'm really calm. And like it is stressful. Like I was, riding my bicycle, and to give an example, I was riding my bicycle home, and I, I'm always looking over my shoulder, and I see this car with the, um, you know, black SUV. I don't know if I should give more details. I probably shouldn't even said that, but uh, long story short, um, let me backtrack. There was a person that I could tell because I'm an experienced bicycle rider that had their turn indicator on, but they weren't, turning. They're just kind of following me. I was like, well, I know what to do. I'm going to pull off to the side into the grass. I've got my helmet on, sunglasses, helmet. I just got out of the gym. I got my backpack, and I'm in the grass. And I'm looking, and I'm looking. So I'm like, well, this person, what's going on? Long story short, I won't go into details, but like, it is that kind of at times that feeling. I know that people are just living their lives, doing their thing, but it does scare me, and I think that's part of the reason why people do that kind of stuff. And I when I was younger, I used to kind of get like that feeling that I'm kind of feeling right now. Imagining that feeling, it's just like it would make me kind of feel nauseous. I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, but now that I am an adult, I don't take it personally. I'm just like, people are just doing their thing. I understand that. So it does remind me of why like a sadness. But I think that's the only real effect on me it has. It's just kind of like this deep, well known sadness that I have. It's just like, and specifically, it's just a sadness of, just being the best that I can be, being myself. And like my father used to say, you're wrong. You'll always be wrong. I'm like, well, God made me this way. God made me who I am. And there are people who disagree and say, well, the devil made you who you are. And I'm like, well, we can agree to disagree. But, you know, so yeah, my feelings are a little hurt, but just from, doing just because I want people to like me. I want to be. I'm a nice person. I really am. Uh, I'm ethical, very ethical, and I'm proud of that. I really am. And I've been to therapy classes. I realize, I used to drink alcohol. This over almost 3 years ago, and I had a problem. You know, but from all the therapy I've received, I understand that, can't let anything or any person take away from the goodness and the good side of me. And I think that goodness and good side of me is directly connected to spirituality. And vampires are super spiritual. Like it's like a well-known thing. Uh, do do I act like a man sometimes, and sit there and you know scratch my beard, wear my favorite hoodie, you know, wear my sunglasses. Of course, I'm. I look kind of. I've got a pretty face or whatever, but I am very manly. I don't think that's wrong. I don't think being a manly man and you're sitting enjoying the sunshine. I think it's beautiful. And if I saw another man minding his own business, being respectful, absolutely, I believe that. You know, it's not only like, well, why is he doing that? Well, because I'm a man. It's really healthy for me to relax. It's that simple. So I do things to relax. I try to be respectful. Obviously, if I'm in public, if I'm looking a certain way or if I'm behaving like old manly and stuff like that, try to be respectful. Do it appropriate times. It is Sunday. Sunday is very, very, very. It's precious to me. I said that I love Christians. I love Christianity. I do. I do. Um, Makes me think about that movie, the Dracula movie. I was watching. They talk about Dracula and the family, the dragon, you know, believe it or not, or whatever. It's just a movie. But there is a part that in that phrase, they say the sworn defenders of Christ, sworn defenders of the Church of Christ. I have the choice of whether or not to let that touch my heart. And I choose to let it touch my heart because it makes me feel better. I'm like, like, I know it's not real. It's imaginary. It's a movie. I know that. But from a creative standpoint, from an artist perspective, and from being a vampire that's lonely, it gives me a sense of pride. And clearly there's more to the story, to be fair, Dracula's in this depiction of historical events of a fictitious character that he you know betrayed the church. But my point is that it makes me feel, and it touches my heart specifically, in my life, because I like to think of myself as a protector, a defender, which is the opposite of, you know, and I do feel like as a man, it makes me feel good, you know, like I know, I'm happy with a humble lifestyle. I do have a humble lifestyle, I really do, you know? And I do feel very close to, I don't talk about my spirituality and my beliefs in God too much, but like, I feel very protected. The spiritual side of me feels really good. And like, I know people, I can imagine some people who might get upset at me saying that. They're like, you don't deserve that. Like, like, I don't care what you believe, you know, blah 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 blah. But like, because I understand that it may go against some of the beliefs that people have, but these are my beliefs, you know, and I'm just honest, you know, and I like making these videos. Like I said, it's very therapeutic for me. Uh, you know, just talking and being kind of interesting. I do think I'm an interesting person. I really do. Uh, I like watching the videos myself and kind of just seeing, you know, what I have to say, listening to it, you know, kind of not so much like checking up on myself, but more so just learning from myself. It's an interesting concept when you see yourself and you're like, well, that's interesting. I didn't really. And what I've learned is that by watching yourself and you're in like how you are, you're there's a part of my like animal human brain that registers like, oh, that's who I am. Like, oh, I see that, and it's been good. It's been really therapeutic. You know, I do talk about myself a lot, talk about my life. You know, the video series is about spreading positive awareness of vampires, but also of building bridges to with different people of all sorts. You know, to have communication and respect. Um, and I do joke around a lot. I know I'm not really joking. You know, I wouldn't say I'm like super duper serious or anything, but you know, just how I feel right now. And I know there are some people that, you know, there people feel all kinds of emotions. Um, but you know, regarding me, they you know they may miss me, may love me, or they may, you know, it's, I think that's beautiful. Like the fact that people feel anything at all. I think human emotions are beautiful. They really are. Power, and I think I'm doing pretty good, making progress, and uh, I'm glad that you know, I'm home and I'm gonna rest a bit. My brain is tired. You know, I worked out so hard that my body's just like, which is it's just like completely normal. And I feel kind of bad for myself just having to apologize for being, you know, human. I don't think that's right. I don't think anybody, including myself, should apologize, you know, for being themselves, being a human being, uh, particularly a human being that's trying their best and trying to be as good. Do I think I'm trying to be as good as I could possibly be? Absolutely not. And I wouldn't say that. If I did, if I put all my energy into being the most good and doing the most good I could, here's the thing. I would love that. Like I've experienced being a leader and being positive, and I know that feeling and helping others. But here's the thing. There are limitations, not only human limitations, but also I'm a gosh darn vampire. You know, I mentioned earlier in this video saying that a real not a fear, but a real sad truth is that it's hard for me to get a job. It's hard for me to do things. Um, they're and that's just a fact of life. It don't matter how pretty my face is or whatever, how big my muscles get, how nice I am, how respectful I am. If I trim my beard, cut my hair, wear a suit and tie, it don't matter. Still a gosh darn vampire. And when I was younger, taking all of that into consideration, and a person may or may not say, they're like, well, I don't truly believe you are a vampire. You know, you can imagine when I was younger, going through hell, and maybe not. That's a strong, strong word. I shouldn't have said that. I take that back. I apologize for that. But going through a very difficult transition, struggling, and encountering people that say, well, you just making it up, and feeling all that pain inside. You know, and for me, what I would do is just take all that pain and turn it into sadness, depression, internalize it. But nowadays, I'm older. I see that there are more productive options. And my favorite productive option when someone says I don't exist and that I'm, you know, people just don't like you. That's why they're treating you that way. So what? You're a big crybaby. So what? Or like my father saying, well, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. That's it. That's all. Don't like you and you're wrong. The productive option for me is to say, I've trained myself to take it inside of my heart and to analyze that from a creative standpoint, using my creativity and say, well, I can definitely I that energy of that disdain, dislike, it's a powerful energy. It's a motivational thing, you know. So I definitely, I've had people who are mentors to me say, "Hey, Mr. People Pleaser." I say, well, what's wrong with that? I want to make people happy. And they're like, well, you better recognize. I'm glad that you recognize that you can take that to a fault, that you can overdo it, and I know that. I take care of myself, and another thing I like to talk about this video series is I hope that I know that a lot of things I talk about other people can relate to in different ways. You know, being disliked or liked or admired or trying to live their life, trying to be the best versions of themselves, being ethical, trying to understand, trying to learn. These are people, everyone does that, you know? So I hope that, from just my experience of being, of my life, that other people are, at the very least, feel something. And they don't, not not in a bad way, but if they choose to feel a bad way, as I said before, energy is energy, and people aren't dumb. They really aren't. So, in a way, I know that's like a form of motivation. Uh, so, yeah, just want to make this video feel better, just talking. And I'm going to end the video here, and hope y'all have a good day. I'm gonna rest for a bit, play some video games, and just hang out for a bit. So, all right, y'all. Thank you.